Hi there, I'm Amy Andrews.
And hi, I'm Jennifer St. George, and welcome to this episode of How to Watch Movies Like a Writer. And we have a fantastic one here for you today, one I've watched many times, Sweet Home Alabama. And it's interesting, Amy, because I've watched this movie so many times that when I actually sat down and analysed it, there were quite a few things in there that I hadn't quite noticed. How about you? Do you like this film?
I love this film. I love this film. It's one of my all-time favorite rom-coms. I watched it not long ago, and every time I watch it, I remember how much I love it and how I swoon over the dialogue and the lines. But I think, yes, like you, when you watch it more analytically, there are things that you think, what were your thoughts about? What did you notice particularly this time?
Yeah, actually, what I noticed is that she at times is not a likable character. So what was interesting is that when you watch the beginning of the film, they set her up so well and motivate her so well that we're rooting for her right from the beginning, because, you know, we start on a shot of her asleep. She's obviously been up all night. She's designing this amazing fashion line. Everybody in her company loves her. They all want her to be successful. So right from the get-go, we're like, we're really going to make sure that she's successful. But as we go through the film, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, she does some pretty sketchy things where I'm like, wow, that's pretty dodgy. So it's interesting that we're still on her side even after she does a lot of things that are highly questionable.
Yeah, so that sort of goes to characterization, doesn't it? It's like, I agree. Like, she's pretty awful. She's pretty horrible to her family and to her friends and to the small town. I think he calls her a hoity-toity Yankee bitch. And she is. She comes back home after being away for 7 years. She hasn't been home in 7 years. She hasn't even contacted her family in 7 years by the sounds of it. Not even like a phone call. I mean, she sent tickets for her parents to come visit her, but she's done nothing like that. And she's just snooty and condescending. But because we saw that lovely bit of her in the beginning, because we saw what actually doesn't open when she wakes up, opens when we see that little first scene, which is kind of the prologue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the beautiful
as kids on the beach, right? So you kind of you get that little, like, you get a prologue. So you kind of know how her old life was and where she's come from, and then you get this, opening when she's, this big hotshot or up and coming kind of New York City fashion designer. And so you get these little kind of glimpses of her all along, even when she's being snooty and horrible. And also, he's such a lovely character, Jake. So it's that thing. There's all these people around her that like her. So the way she's coming across isn't, in some instances, isn't necessarily the kind of character she is. We get these little glimpses all the way through of her softer side, of when she meets her friends, when she comes home again. Every time she meets them with with just love and wonder, and she's excited to see them. So you get, and they are excited to see her, and they tell stories of what she was like when she was a kid. It was obviously a bit of a hellraiser, right? So you get all this kind of information because she's such a well-rounded character, and this is what we talk about, right, in the course, about making your characters well-rounded, giving them depth, giving them three-dimensionality, don't make them kind of cardboard cutout. Because she is so well-rounded, you can see that through all that nastiness and horribleness, the condescension when she comes back home, that inside she's just this small town girl who's trying to make it big and is just terrified. She's terrified that it's all going to fall down.
Yeah, and that she's going to be found out. But it is an interesting list of what we forgive her for, Amy. So she's nasty to her old friends. She outs Bobby Ray.
Yep.
She cheats on her fiance by kissing another man. She lies about who she is and where she lives. And she wasn't there when her dog died. So it's a pretty big list of things that we forgive her for. So it just really emphasizes that point that if you motivate a character really well and you set a character up really well, it's incredible what we will forgive her for as we go along. And as you say, we know deep down she's a good person, but she's scrambling to keep it all together.
Yeah, she really, really, really is. And I think because we get those little insights of her all the way along, like I think because we get that great insight into her relationship with her mother, you understand her more as well. You understand that actually her mother was kind of the one that pushed her away because she wanted her daughter to have a bigger life than she had. And even right at the end, they're still kind of sorting out that relationship between the mother. So you get that lovely insight. You can sort of see kind of a bit why she is like she is and why her mother doesn't really her mother's not really mad or angry at her about the distance and the absence. I think because her mother knows that she was sort of she set her daughter up to do that. That's what she wanted. She's like living this. She's living her mother's dream that her mother really wanted but never ever had. So
Yeah.
those little things all the way throughout really help give her this rounded character. Like the little tiny things are like when the dog jumps in the water, on the jetty and looks like it's going to drown. She's like concerned about that. When he asked her to go on the plane with him that time, and she almost does. You can see that she wants to, and she almost goes. There's little softer moments. They start off and they're just arguing at each other all the time, argue. But there's these little kind of glimpses that you get into her and you get into them and their relationship that really makes you kind of you're just rooting for both of them really from the beginning. You want them both to get back together, even though she's got this perfectly lovely fiance back in New York City who also adores her.
Adores her.
Yeah.
And again, that I think is such an interesting characterization. I have to say, this is where I found the movie fell down just a little bit. I know it's one of our all-time favorites, but the Patrick Dempsey character is such a great guy, and you do get that feeling that maybe he's just loving Melanie to annoy his mother, but he's not. In those moments when the mother comes at him trying to denigrate Melanie, he defends her. I love her. So when we get to that point in the wedding where he walks away so easily, I find that a little bit like, why would you walk away from, you're just that close to marrying this woman, and he accepts it and walks away? I don't know. How do you find that moment?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, that sort of line. He says, so this is how that feels, or something like that he says. And I think what he means is, after thinking about that, because you're right, he does like give up quite easily. But I think he's talking about self-sacrifice, like that, that's something that he's not grown up with, right? His mother's a go-getter. She's the mayor of New York. She's a political animal. She thinks he's going to be the next president of the United States. She's ambitious. All those things that have really kind of worn off on him. She's not a self-sacrificing type, the mother, at all. She's like, oh, I'm going to, this is my goal. I'm driven. This is what I'm going to get. She was very, this kind of, she's an interesting character, actually, talking about characterization, because I think she's probably the one out of all of the characters of the most cookie cut out, right? She's kind of the evil stepmother or the evil, mother-in-law. She's, there is some dimensionality to her, and you can see throughout, there are little kind of bits where you can see why she's the way she is. Obviously, her husband was a philanderer. She's a divorcee. And I love that bit where his mother first meets her parents, and at that little backwoods kind of house in Alabama, and the father says, Earl says to her, I bet Katie could do with a drink right now. And she goes,
yeah.
Kind of glimpses into her. She really loves the son. That's her whole life is her ambition for her son. So there's some dimensionality to her, but she's probably the most two-dimensional of all the characters. But I just love the characterization of this movie. I think it's really, the film, the plot is wacky and the setup is wacky and the friends are wacky, but it's really the characters, their depth and their love for each other that really, really, is the kind of the true gem. It's kind of in this movie.
Yeah. And I think if we just jump to theme very briefly, I think Jake sums it up beautifully when he says, Melanie, you can have roots and wings. I think that's what the theme of the whole movie is. You can have roots and wings. You don't have to throw all your past away And it beautifully sets it up at the end with the little, vignette glimpses into their future life, that they haven't dumped everything in Alabama and moved to New York. They have both.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I think oftentimes the conflict is between, because, one of the tropes in this thing is like small town versus city, right? And they sort of set it up with that beautiful line. You can have roots and wings, to say you don't have to choose. You can be here and you can be there, and we can make it work. Even though he's not saying that at that point in time, that's what he's meaning, and you're right. I think that's kind of one of the themes. I guess we skipped over themes and tropes, didn't we?
Yes,
definitely.
so let's talk tropes.
Big city reunion romance, second chance romance, and love triangle. And I have to say, love triangles are never my favorite thing. But I think it's, this one's handled reasonably well. I think it helps that both of the characters, again, this goes to characterization, both Andrew and Jake are really deeply honorable and kind of good guys.
Yeah. No, that's right. And I have difficulty with the love triangle one too, because particularly I have trouble with cheating, and the fact that Melanie actually cheats on her fiance. She kisses another man, and that's not good. And it's Jake that pushes it away, isn't it? It's not even her.
He does. He steps out of it, and again, which goes to show how honourable he is. That he gets carried away for a second, but then he steps away because his honour won't let him, kind of go there with her. But like, if you think about it, actually, she wasn't cheating. She was actually cheating on her husband all this time, because they weren't divorced. She's actually kind of cheated twice. If you think about it.
Yeah. So again, we've got Melanie doing some pretty bad stuff, and yet still we want her to have her happy ever after. So we talked a little bit about that opening shot and why it worked so well, and it set the movie up so beautifully. And we've talked about the fact that Melanie's so well motivated as well, and a lot about character. So we, in the romance world too, we talk a bit about that Hollywood moment. So I find it very interesting that some of the biggest Hollywood moments are with Melanie and Andrew. So, we walk into Tiffany's, and everything with the ring, which is pretty Hollywood momenty, and she walks into the house after working all night, and there's roses and vases of roses and rose petals everywhere. So really, it's interesting that the big Hollywood over the top moments are with the man she's not actually going to end up with.
Yes, that's true. There is quite a few of those moments, I suppose. But I guess for me, the Hollywood moment is, and the Hollywood moment we talk about in the course, as being that kind of iconic scene from a film that you might not necessarily have ever seen the film, but everybody talks about. That's the one sort of scene that everybody remembers. And I guess for me, and I guess because it's a great bookend, and we talk about this in the course as well, is the moment at the end of the movie where she goes out to him in the pouring rain, and they have the repeat of the same scene they had at the very beginning of the movie. It's so beautifully bookended. They're both in the rain, they're both running in the rain. There's a thunderstorm coming. There's lightning. There's sand. They say the same line, which is beautiful. Why do you want to marry me? Because then I get to kiss you whenever I want. Like, I love that line. Love it. But only because there's there's 30 years. She's been in New York for 7 years, and I don't know how long it's been since they've been kids. But there's been a distance of time. So to me, that was probably the Hollywood moment, sort of in the movie, as far as Jake and Melanie were concerned. But the book ending there is superb. Like, I just, I love that. It's such a great technique to use.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We get the symbolization all the way through of the glass, of the glass that's made from the lightning and the sand, which is a constant reminder of their past. It's a constant reminder of what he does, constant reminder that he's actually made it, and she doesn't know that he's made it. It's really, really beautiful done, the symbolism of the glass all the way through.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how often she's so close to finding out he's successful, but he doesn't want her to know that. He doesn't want her to love him for the success. He wants her to love him for him as he is. So he keeps pushing that discovery of what he's done away all the way through, which is really interesting in that he doesn't want her to know.
I think.
So
Do you think it's his pride? Like that's all he's got left with her. He's only got his pride. I think. Like she walked out on him. She's become this major success. So he's just too proud and bloody minded, I suppose. If he's not going to be the one to tell her that he's made a success now, and the fact that he came to New York and she never knew that, she finds that out. You know, he actually chased her to New York, and she finds that out sort of much later. And sort of says that at one point, I wrote it down. One of them, I think the friend with the baby in the bar, that's another great line as well, says, he knew he needed to conquer the world to get you back, and he's been trying ever since. But he's not going to tell her. He wants her to find out under her own steam, get off a high horse, and just, you know, start kind of looking around and stop being this kind of image that she's portraying herself, and, like, you know, sort of get back to basics. And, you know, like, use Google, for God's sake, you know.
yeah, that is a lovely line. That's a line that brings tears to my eyes. You know, he's been in the background trying to prove himself this whole time, and she has no idea. Yeah, it's good. And so then let's move then on. Yeah, go on. I
was going to say, what struck me about this movie is that it's a movie of contrasts, like on so many levels. So there's a contrast immediately we get between the two men, right? We get like one of the very first scenes. We get the room full of rose petals. We get rose petals everywhere. We get that he's, you know, this big gesture of, you know, here's Tiffany's, here's all these diamond glittering rings. So he's hugely romantic. He's, you know, this larger than life, slick, amazing, nice, perfect kind of a boyfriend. And then I actually counted, it was the 6-minute mark. You get this bit where her friend says to her, you know, I think he's going to ask you to marry him in Ireland. And she has this moment where she kind of goes, you think, because he's so happy with him, that that would be this great moment, but you can see her face drop, and she's thinking, and you think, oh, well, instantly, you know, as a reader or watching the film, you think, well, why isn't she happy about him asking her to marry him, right? And so then, like, at 12 minutes, she's back in her hometown, and you instantly get this comparison, this between Jake, who is the opposite. He's in jeans and a t-shirt. He's got grease all over him. He's got this rundown old house. He's got this beat-up old dog. So instantly, there's a contrast there. There's a contrast between the two mothers, between her mother and his mother, and between Jake's mother as well, right? They're all these contrasts. Contrast between Drew's mother's relationship with her ex. Obviously, there's bitterness and acrimony there, and the contrast between Melanie's parents, kind of beautiful, complicated, sometimes crazy, kind of, you know, marriage, just, you know, going on and on forever. There's a contrast between her city friends and her small town friends. It's just this, like, I love dichotomy all throughout. There's this amazing dichotomy that's saying that kind of is keeping the tension up. It keeps the tension up all the way through. There's this divide between the two. Can she be who she was and who she is now, and still have it all? Like, you know, the whole "can you have roots and wings" sort of thing. It keeps the tension just nicely bubbling along all the way, with all these kind of comparisons and the dichotomy of it all.
Yeah, I agree. And the interesting thing about her name is that we think she's called Melanie Carmichael, and right at the halfway mark, and this is what Michael Haig calls the mirror moment, which, if you look at a lot of films, the main characters either metaphorically looking in the mirror or actually looking in the mirror. And that moment, 50% of the way through, we find out she's not Melanie Carmichael. She's Melanie Schmuder. And she has to, in that moment, you know, it's facing the dichotomy that you've just talked about in herself, is that she's even faking her own name. Yeah. And where she lives. Yeah.
And, like, Schmuder, like, you couldn't get any more kind of redneck, I wouldn't think, than, like, that name. It just was, you know, it was like kind of a cherry on top of the cake, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of, and there's this theme of hiding, a lot of hiding of things that slowly come out over the movie. That, you know, we're terrified for her that she's going to be found out, and you know, Jake is clearly keeping a secret, and when's that going to come out? So that's really great at keeping the tension going through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing we talk about often is that ticking clock. Again, in this movie, we have that. So we've got a wedding coming. So how on earth are Jake and Melanie going to get together when we've got a wedding that keeps getting brought forward and brought forward? And, you know, it's not going to be an island. Now it's going to be down the road in, you know, a few weeks' time. And we're still going, but hang on, she's going to marry the wrong guy. So having that ticking clock, and I use that a lot in my books because it adds that instant tension to everything.
And it's another layer of tension, right? Exactly. And I think the tension peaks in a way. It has this lovely, like tension should, lovely ebbing and flowing, right, of tension. But the barroom scene where she's playing pool that first time and she's at her most horrible, like, it's almost painful to watch how when she gets drunk, how like bitingly sarcastic and awful she is to everybody. But from that, you get she has all this unresolved like sort of grief and anger. You find out for the first time that that he got her pregnant, and that's why they got married, right? And she's had this miscarriage, and you really feel that actually she's still processing all of that. Actually moving to New York wasn't about following a dream, it was just about escaping all this kind of childhood unresolved stuff that she didn't know really how to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And from his point of view, when he meets you know, Andrew, the Patrick Dempsey character, he said, what happened to that girl? And he says she got knocked up and married the first loser out of high school. And that's how he thinks of himself. So, and you're just like, no.
Yeah, you know, even though he's a massively successful businessman now, and he's still trying to prove himself to her. He still thinks of himself, you know, as, you know, I wonder what point in time, had she not come back, would he have thought, okay, now's the right time to go and get her, you know, and because now I've proved myself, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other nice little drop in to the little Easter egg one is about the fact that they never had their wedding dance. So, you know, you hear that a couple of beats through the movie. So you're waiting for that wedding dance as well. And that's another lovely little technique to do in books, is build a moment through and then deliver on the promise at the end.
Absolutely, yeah. That's left like, almost like a bookend, but not quite. You know, at the end of each, at the end of the your end, but like another little Easter egg. I think so. The scene in the bar is this, you know, horribly kind of tense scene, but you find out it's very informative, right? You find out a lot of information. Same as the scene in the cemetery. Like, I once again cried in that scene in the cemetery, in the dog cemetery, where she goes and she visits her old dog and she talks about the mistakes she made, and you can see there she's breaking down. She can see she's not being a nice person. She can see all the mistakes she made. She talks about the baby she lost and how the dog never left her when everything started to fall apart, and how Melanie just left the dog without a backward glance, and how lonely, and how he must have thought, had he done something wrong. And it's just this really a beautiful emotional moment that really, really again digs into her character and kind of causes this like great big upwelling of empathy for her, for this young girl who got, you know, knocked up out of high school essentially and was just sort of running scared the entire time. And it does help you kind of forgive her a bit for being so awful and nasty in that kind of earlier scene, because you can understand you can see her motivations.
Yeah, and you're right. She's got all this unresolved feelings in her that she hasn't looked at or thought about in 7 years, and coming home makes her confront it all. And it's really powerful.
Yeah. Can we talk about the tension, another kind of tension, the tension between Melanie and Jake? Like, they are like, the tension between them, the sexual tension between them, with their arguing and their banter, is just sizzling right from the start. Like, that first argument, it's just like, you just want to say, oh, just like, you know, just go to bed and do it already. They're just so like sparking off each other. The tension is just like, woof, like really just top notch. And I don't get that with Andrew. I don't get that they have this amazing central tension. I get that they have a very, he's a great, great guy, but there's not this fire and passion that there is with, that always has been with Jake.
Yeah, that's right. And that fire, again, carries all the way through to the wedding cake at the end, when they click off those two,
fighting
things. And so and that's the image you're left with on the top of the cake, is that this fiery relationship is going to carry on. They're not going to suddenly just, step back and it's all going to be rose petals. They are going to be fiery, and being fiery together is okay.
Yes, and I guess also, I hadn't really thought about it till just now, actually, but I guess the whole lightning thing is a real metaphor for fire and passion, right? Like, in the beginning, we get this like lightning strike in the sand. At the end, you get in with all the lightning. You get kind of this whole theme of fire and passion and lightning all the way through. How lightning can make, can be dangerous, but can also make beautiful things like that glass. Yeah. It's like perfect. There's so much symbolism in it, so many Easter eggs, so much. It's just a really, really well done, well written kind of rom-com. I think it's just, it's pretty perfect, I think, even years later, because it's quite, it's not, I don't know how old it is now, but it must be coming up to like 15 years or something. So I think it holds up.
Yeah. And the other thing with the lightning too, again, that happens is that they say lightning doesn't strike twice, and it strikes twice, and then the love strikes twice. So they have the love at the beginning, and then they have the love again at the end. So love has struck twice.
So see, now I didn't even that. So that's true. Yeah. The symbolism is just, it's top notch, as is the dialogue, don't you think? Like, I wrote down so much dialogue because I just, did you write down any dialogue that you took notice of?
Yeah, I wrote down a few. So you go.
Okay, I said I really love how he calls her a hoity-toity Yankee bitch to start with. And I like how she says, "I'm not your wife, Jake. I'm just the first girl who climbed in the backseat of your truck." I mean, what a dig is that at him? It's just like such a great line, and just so powerfully delivered, and such a, like a real punch to the gut for him, which was completely purposeful on her behalf. I had, just because I talk slow don't mean I'm stupid. That's some great lines.
That's one of my favorite lines.
Yeah, I had you can take the girl out of the honky tonk, but not the honky tonk out of the girl, which is obviously, very old, well used, cliched line, but perfect in that sort of situation. What about you? You got any more?
Well, I thought one of the really telling lines that sets the movie up too, that we know something's coming, is when she says, oh God, is she saying it to her mother? I think she's saying it to mother. "I met a guy. He's a great catch. I'm happy." Really? And you think, oh God, no, you're not.
Yeah,
and it's just that
into it.
Yeah. So, and we've met him. He's incredible, and yet you can see that it's not quite right for her. And it's and that very interesting one line.
Yes, I think he's right for Melanie Carmichael, but he's not right for Melanie Smuter, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love when he said to her, "The girl I knew used to be fearless." I loved that line. I love the whole "you can have roots and wings." I love how she said to her mother, "What's so wrong with being you, Mama?" That was like a real
I know that line,
because you get this impression that she's trying to like pull away from her mother all this time, but she's one that says to her, "What's wrong with being you, Mama?" Which is like really, really sweet line. I love when Jake and Andrew first meet, when they're talking about, this girl, Melanie Smuter, who blew up the bank with a cat. And Andrew says, "That's quite a story." And Jake says, "She was quite a girl." Oh, that's so good. I have more. Have you more?
So many. I mean, we could spend another 10 minutes. It's so good. But another one I pulled out was when they say to each other, no one finds their soulmate when they're 10 years old. And it's like, yes, you did.
Yes, I know. Yes, I had that written down. I like how his mother says to him, on the day of the wedding when he's going to go off and get some more glass and the storm's coming. For someone who's been holding on so hard, you're pretty quick to let go. Thought that was a great line. And then in the rain at the end, Jake says, "What is it about you Southern girls? You can't make the right decision until you've tried all the wrong ones."
Yeah,
another great line. And then of course the whole what are we married to me for? So I can kiss you anytime I want. Like the dialogue is sparkling and just amazing. And we do a whole section on dialogue in our courses, right? Because dialogue is important. Dialogue, is not just there to to see people speaking to each other, but it also really helps, tell truths and drive the plot forward and give away information, give away character. It's so important to get your dialogue right, and really looking at films, because film is dialogue, right? That's all it is.
That's right.
It's great. Looking at analyzing film dialogue is a really great way to help you to inform your writing, because dialogue is king in film.
Yeah, absolutely. And dialogue, I found when I first started writing, was one thing that I had to spend quite a lot of time developing, is how to write really authentic, natural sounding dialogue. And it is a skill. So it's one you really have to, certainly in my case, it was one I had to work on to really make that dialogue sparkle and leap off the page. And as you say, it's not just the words that are being spoken, it's how they're being spoken and what's the underlying, what's being said. So yeah, no, it's great. So we've talked a lot. We've already kind of talked a bit about the ending and most memorable moments. Do we think they're going to be happy ever after, that happy ever after guarantee?
Yeah, so Ali Blake talks about the HEA guarantee, doesn't she, in the How to Write Love course. And it's about, the scene in the book or in the story or in the film where you think once the end's reached that, actually, they will actually be okay. That will actually okay in real, everyday, mundane kind of life. What did you think?
I think it's fun. Well, I think obviously they're going to be, I mean, she has said goodbye to this amazing guy for Jake. So yes, they're going to be together. But as I said earlier, I think the imagery on the cake tells us that it's still going to be fiery. There's still going to be, their home life is not going to be just, argument free. I think they will still argue, but they'll argue more together than at each other, if you get what I mean. That doesn't kind of make sense, but then I think their fiery relationship is going to continue, but I think they're going to be okay together forever.
The fire and passion again, the kind of the lightning thing, but you can see that they've both kind of and certainly I think Melanie has the biggest arc in the movie. You can see that she's really matured through the whole process. She's not kind of she doesn't feel the constant push pull between the two Melanies. She's kind of okay with it. But I think in this movie, the HEA guarantee, there's a bit of a cheat, because at the end you get this lovely montage, don't you, of
that's right.
snaps of the future opening shop in New York and her parents being in New York and them having a little girl, and so you can kind of see, and it's not just about them, about the montage isn't just their their jobs and their success and that, or the fact they've had a little girl. It's like pictures of them like just walking their dog down, obviously, a country kind of lane or whatever. So you can actually see there that they have these kind of famous or successful lives, but actually they're also just enjoying the little tiny moments together as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I got from that montage too is that they haven't completely given up one world or the other, that they're able to make both worlds work. So, again, it's right back to that theme. You can have roots and wings, and it's displayed in that montage at the end. So one of the interesting things I always like to do in a movie is, at some point, a character will often say the theme of the movie, like we'll state it out loud, and you just got to listen for it. And that's why analyzing movies is so fun, because sometimes, I mean, I've got so much more out of this watching it analytically than I did the other 50 million times that I've watched it. And you can learn so much from it. the little things that are going into your subconscious that makes it so enjoyable. But when we're writing, we have to be conscious about putting these things into our books to make them really sing.
And I
So
think
we're
this movie, in this movie, and there's a lot of really big scenes, right? A lot of really big kind of, the barroom scene and the scene at Tiffany's, like those really big things, which every movie or book has. But there's also the smaller, quieter scenes as well that are just important, like her in the dog graveyard, right, talking to the dog. When she kind of comes clean to her parents about the whole situation, and when she realizes that it's him who is Deep South Glass, like just they're not like these big kind of, look at me moments. They're the kind of smaller, quieter moments. So every book has to have this kind of ebb and flow of, of big scenes, and I think people often think that that's a book is just all about kind of the big important moments, but you need these kind of little quieter moments linking it together and telling the truths that you don't often see in the bigger kind of scenes.
Absolutely. And Amy, you've nailed something else I had to learn. So when I first got my first editors, that was something that was missing in my work, those reflective moments, because I just wanted action, go, it's all drama, all go. But you have to have, the reader has to have a moment to reflect and relax as well. So you have to have those quieter moments. And that was something that was lacking in my stories. I didn't always have those quiet moments. So that's another thing. It's amazing how much you learn about writing as you write. And I think that's what's so lovely about what we've put together in the course is, between us, like 75 years of learning all this stuff, and then, pulling it out and showing people how to actually put it in their stories so that you're going to write a story that actually sells or that, ultimately readers love.
I think often in those quieter moments is where you get people's motivations, where you find character motivations. You get kind of the bigger scenes can be more dramatic, can have more flair, and sometimes you can't understand the subtext of it all, right? But for those quieter moments where you do get the subtext and you do get the kind of, the reflective moments, the time to take a breath and to go, oh, okay, that's the motivation behind that. I kind of understand that now.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Okay, well, we're nearly at the end. Is there anything you wanted to say to wrap this up, Amy?
I have pages and pages and pages of notes here. Honestly, I think this is the one that I've taken the most notes about, which is surprising because it's, it's a film that I've watched a lot. So I wouldn't have thought I would need to take kind of that many notes. It's amazing what as we're saying, it's amazing what you can learn when you watch a film analytically. Same as if when you're reading books, in whatever genre you're writing in, it's amazing if you actually start to read them analytically, what you can kind of, what you can pick up. I just thought maybe talking a bit about the black moment, like there was a couple of black moments, I think, in this film. I think the black moment for Melanie was when Drew finds out that she lied to him and, he walks away. I think kind of that's her black moment. I don't think it's a black moment of the film necessarily. Did you have any thoughts about the black moments at all?
Yeah, I think for her as well, that is when she has got to that point where it's all is lost. And it's interesting for her as it comes fairly early in the story. I mean, often the black moments, the all is lost moment is much further towards the end, but she has hers quite early on. And then it all looks like it's going to be okay. Yeah. And then for you, Jake's black moment?
I guess, I don't know, maybe it's when he signs the divorce papers. Maybe it's when he really realizes that that's, that he has to let her go. That realization for him that, he has, what's the point of holding on when, she wants to go. I don't know if we get that scene though. We just see the next morning when, oh, that's right. I guess the black one, because that happens after the bar scene, right? Where she, gets really drunk and kind of vomits in his car, and she wakes up the next morning and the divorce papers are signed. And yeah, so I guess, that scene was pretty painful. That was a pretty wasn't the black moment, but certainly for him, I think that really, I think that brought home to him that actually she's turned into a person I don't really even like anymore. And that was, he still loved her, but he didn't really like her anymore, which was a sad, kind of really deeply sad moment for him.
Yeah, and deeply sad for us too.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
she just behaves so badly and so horribly. And yeah, you just like, you know, yeah, it's hard to watch.
I love that the cat got a cameo at the end there. You know, this cat that kind of is being mythical all throughout the book, and you think, oh, the cat must be dead. You don't really know. You know, they kind of keep talking about it, and then at the end you get that little cameo of the cat looking at the cake. I thought that was, you know, another good kind of bookend in a way. Not strictly speaking a bookend, but a motive that, you know, an Easter egg that had been popped out all the way along, and then suddenly you get this kind of resolution to it. So yeah, great storytelling, great characterization. Definitely worth a look. If you haven't seen it already, have you been hiding under a rock? If you do watch it, try to really look at it. Yeah, their choices they made during the storytelling of this film. I think you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and I think honestly, as we talked about in analyzing this one, there's so much more to this movie than I realized, even though I've watched it so many times. So it's a great one for a masterclass in so many aspects of putting a great story together. So we encourage you to, you know, watch it and watch it analytically. So that probably brings us to the end. So thanks so much, everyone, for coming along and listening to us and watching and learning a bit more about one of our favorites, Sweet Home Alabama. And as we've talked about during this session, is that there is so much to learn. So if there are any writers out there who are keen to boost your craft or learn some of these techniques that are so cleverly done in this movie, or even learn about things like writer productivity, we've put courses together just for you to really help you learn how to do this successfully. So come to the How to Write Academy, have a look at the links below, and we'd love to see you there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.